Hello and welcome to News Blitzer. On April 22, 2025, a devastating terrorist attack in Pahalgam, Jammu and Kashmir, claimed the lives of 26 people, mostly tourists. India attributed the attack to the Resistance Front, a group it claims is supported by Pakistan. Pakistan denied any involvement, but the incident heightened tensions. India responded with Operation Sindoor, conducting drone and missile strikes against what it described as terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan. Pakistan countered with Operation Iron Wall, targeting Indian military facilities. But this wasn't just another border skirmish. Both nations possess nuclear arsenals, making any escalation a matter of global concern. Then on May 11, 2025, CNN said that the US had received intelligence about Pakistan's potential disturbing actions in the conflict, prompting urgent diplomatic efforts. While the details remain classified, the intelligence was significant enough to involve high-level US officials. More importantly, the tipping point came on May 11, 2025 when both sides escalated their conventional military actions. CNN's Matthew Chance reported about India's military activities on the day of the ceasefire.
Early this morning, India launched unprecedentedly deep attacks inside Pakistan, airstrikes on Pakistani military bases, the deepest inside the country that India has struck for decades, really since the war between the two countries back in 1971. So extremely serious escalation there.
Pakistan, on the other hand, responded by a counterattack on Indian military targets. This is what CNN's Nick Robertson, reporting from Islamabad, said about Pakistan's actions.
Pakistan was sort of on a military pause to give a window for diplomacy. What I understand from this source is that that was blown out of the window early this morning when India attacked 3 air bases, one of them here in the capital, just on the outskirts of the capital. That, according to the source, Pakistan responded with a massive barrage of missiles and rockets, they say, Pakistan says, into Indian military facilities, bases inside India, air bases, weapon storage, and along that disputed line of control in Kashmir against military bases there. They say that this, from the Pakistan perspective, their communications, how they were communicating with Secretary Rubio, that really put India on the back foot. It didn't know what had happened. India, according to Pakistan, reached out to Secretary Rubio, reached out to the Saudis, reached out to the Turks, reached out to others to find a diplomatic off-ramp.
It's clear from the CNN reporting that the ceasefire was preceded by an elevated level of escalation. More importantly, between the two exchanges, India was able to repel most incoming projectiles fired by Pakistan, but the same was not the case with Pakistan. The Indian forces were successful in hitting most of their targets, indicating the vast military and technological superiority of Indian conventional forces. Pakistan would not be able to deal with a full-scale conventional Indian military conflict through conventional warfare. Further, former CIA officer and current RAND Corporation analyst Derek Grossman claimed India's strike on the Nur Khan Air Base threatened Pakistan's nuclear command and caused a radioactivity leakage. His remarks, however, were not officially acknowledged by either India or the United States. In any case, the intelligence warnings were severe enough for the US to abandon its neutral stand on the conflict expressed just a few days earlier and got actively involved in diffusing the crisis. Vice President J.D. Vance contacted Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio engaged with both nations. And as is now clear, the US aimed to prevent further escalation given the nuclear capabilities of both countries and the difficulty that Pakistan was having in coping with India's strikes on prime targets like air force and military bases and defense installations. Pakistan has an estimated 170 nuclear warheads, which are slightly more than India's 164 to 180 warheads. In addition, unlike India, which adheres to a no-first-use policy, Pakistan's military doctrine allows for the possibility of first use in certain scenarios in which it finds itself with its back to the wall. Statements from Pakistani officials, such as Ambassador Muhammad Khalid Jamali, who referenced the full spectrum of power, and Minister Hanif Abbasi, who mentioned Pakistan's nuclear readiness, heightened concerns. Further, The fear was not merely about a nuclear exchange but the fear of nuclear radiation from the Pakistani nuclear arsenal, like the ones near Noor Khan and Sargodha air base which were hit by Indian strikes. Air Marshal Bharti described the strikes on Noor Khan and Sargodha to the media as strategic messaging. A senior officer added, more than the actual damage, the hits constituted strategic messaging. New York Times and India Today report that the U.S. intelligence likely highlighted a risk of disastrous escalation than had already occurred, possibly related to Pakistan's military posture or strategic signaling. That there was a serious nuclear concern is highlighted by President Rump categorically saying that a nuclear war was prevented, indicating that the potential for nuclear escalation was a major concern that led to the ceasefire. What made matter worse is, as reported by New York Times, the warheads themselves are presumed to be spread around the country, making any attack near such facilities a cause for serious concern. The same New York Times report, quoting a former U.S. official familiar with Pakistan's nuclear program, reports that Pakistan's biggest fear is its nuclear command authority being decapitated. In addition, India's no-first-use policy ensures it would only use nuclear weapons in retaliation, but the stakes were high as any Indian response to such adventurism by Pakistan would be met with an exponentially greater response of the same kind. A combination of all these nuclear concerns apparently prompted swift action to facilitate dialogue and avert a crisis. Clearly, nuclear concerns are what affected the situation in the primary and led to the ceasefire. Secondly, India's agreement to a ceasefire is in its favor and strategically advantageous, allowing it to maintain international support while keeping its military options open. According to the government, India has only taken a pause from military while Operation Sindoor-like operations are being enshrined as India's future response to terrorist attacks from across the border. What this means is that in the future any cross-border terrorism would face military action against Pakistan and not merely terrorist infrastructure. This is because India believes that the terrorists are being patronized by Pakistan and that terrorism against India is a state policy of Pakistan. Whether the recent conflict in which Pakistani conventional forces were no match for India leads to a permanent cessation of terrorist activities is yet to be seen. Already, the ceasefire has faced challenges, with both sides reporting minor violations shortly after. Third, domestic pressure and international self-interest pressure and concerns played a significant role in bringing about the ceasefire. This is because any nuclear conflict anywhere affects everyone in the world in various ways. The implications of the India-Pakistan conflict extends beyond the region, given the nuclear capabilities and geopolitical dynamics involved. Since 1947, the two nations have clashed over Kashmir, leading to 3 major wars and numerous skirmishes. Recent tensions, including Pakistan's historical support for militant groups and India's suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty, have further complicated relations. China's support for Pakistan adds another layer of complexity. The potential for escalation in South Asia could impact global economies, food security, and political stability. That is why global leaders, including those from the UK, Germany, and the EU, who along with other nations had been calling for restraint and de-escalation, welcomed the ceasefire. Even China, a nuclear-armed nation itself, though firmly supporting Pakistan, also called for restraint as any full-fledged war between Pakistan and India would draw it into the equation as well. International mediators, like the US, played a major role in bringing about the ceasefire and will be essential in fostering dialogue on preventing future crises. Effectually, the ceasefire highlights the critical role of diplomacy and the involvement of the international community in preventing conflicts between nuclear-armed states. It goes without saying that without third-party intervention, no one can say for sure whether there would have been a ceasefire before intense conflict between the two nations. Pakistan was on the back foot militarily. As matters stand today, the May 2025 ceasefire between India and Pakistan was a vital step toward peace, but sustaining it will require ongoing efforts. In the comments, tell us, what steps can lead to lasting peace in South Asia? Thank you for watching, and we look forward to your feedback.